No worries, whatever it
Okay.
takes.
Yeah.
I know those conversations can turn interesting routes, so I'm not on a time limit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you're nice and relaxed. You're on holiday.
Yeah.
It's good. Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 208. And we are with a very, very special guest today. Someone who's been mentioned a number of times on the podcast, and someone who was mentioned most recently, I think, when we had Andrew Russell on a few weeks back. When he was training to lift the Dinnie Stones up in Scotland. So I will introduce you to him in a minute. But as I just said to him a minute ago, it's a first. Well, it's two separate firsts for the podcast today. So I will explain that in a minute. First of all, I'm just going to catch up with Mr. Peter Lamp, because actually our guest at the moment is on holiday. And Peter Lant and myself are both on holiday tomorrow, although not together.
Not together, exactly.
Okay. So we're on holiday tomorrow. So I'm sure we'll probably talk a little bit about training on holiday and that sort of thing, because especially with our guests, because I've seen him training on holiday. Anyway, Mr. Peter Lant, are you okay, mate?
I'm great. I'm feeling a little bit of a fraud because we're not going to be recording anything over the next 2 weeks because we're going on holiday, and our guest just before that is on holiday recording this with us. So it's kind of like that's commitment. We're not as committed as.
Well, no, we've got
I know, but
we've got podcasts in the bank. We don't, you don't know what Wi-Fi is going to be like when you're away and that sort of thing, do you? So I think
that's a good stance. I'll stand with that. I'm with James on that one.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So we want it to be good, so we're not going to do it while we're away because it might be substandard.
Excellent. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, you can see a lovely blue sky behind our guest, because he is our first ever German guest, and he is our first guest who is coming live from Tuscany because he's on a family holiday there. And last week, actually, we had Keith Morlon, and he was coming live from Poland for the first time. So we really are, we're going international with the podcast. We certainly are. So our guest today is, now I'm not sure if it's Mr. Sven. Is it Rieger or Rieger or neither?
Rieger.
Rieger. Okay, Mr. Sven Rieger. Okay, who is a German guest, and he is. We'll talk a lot about this, but just to kind of tee him up a little bit before we start, he is the 204th person to lift the Dinnie Stones up in Scotland. He's a Strongfirst Team Leader. He also holds the Strongfirst Elite certification or status. He has also done Sinister, which we'll talk about later, because many of you won't know what that is. He's functional movements systems FMS level 1. He is based, I believe, in Stuttgart in Germany. But correct. Currently, like I said, coming from the 30 plus degrees rolling Tuscan countryside, which looks very idyllic. So how are you doing, Sven? Are you okay?
Oh, I'm very well. Thank you very much. And you make me sound way more important than I actually am.
Well, we have met. I've met you, Sven, before. I think it was at Lilleshall in England.
It should have been in 2019, right?
What was that there? Was it Strong Endurance, or was it one of the MS ones? Strong Endurance, was it?
I was there as well, yeah.
Yeah, it was Strong Endurance, and I also was there for the SFG2 with Brett Jones.
Okay.
So I think I remember you were quite formidable, and Pavel was getting you to do like demonstrate stuff like snatches with 40 kilos and that. But I also remember you'd have dinner at Lilleshall, and then you'd go down the road and have dinner down there afterwards as well, because there wasn't enough food.
It was not.
He's a big lad.
Case that they hadn't enough food. It was just an offer. I
took it. Excellent. So yeah, we are joined by Sven Rieger. Like I say, really, really privileged and honored that he took the time, because I messaged him we set this podcast, this interview up a couple of weeks ago, and then it was just, I think yesterday or the day before, I saw Sven on Instagram training, you know, outside on it, like I say, with this crisp, gorgeous, bright blue sky behind him. And he said, it's the first day of training on my holiday in Tuscany. So I kind of thought, oh, I wonder if he's forgot. So I messaged him and said, you're on holiday. You sure you're okay for this? And you said, yeah, looking forward to it. So yeah, thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your holiday to be with us. So I suppose, Sven, to begin with, that you've done so much, you know, like I said, I listed a few of your achievements just in the little intro there, but I suppose just for all of us listening and watching, maybe if you could just give us a little bit of a history of kind of yourself, your training history, you know, how you got involved in strength training, you know, there's so much to cover. I mean, we'll kind of, obviously, like we always do, we'll go off on a few tangents, I'm sure, and we'll dip in and out of questions as we go. But do you want to kind of start wherever you want to start and tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on. I know that there were at least two people, Andrew Russell and Mark Valenti, who mentioned me. So I hope I will not disappoint with my story, because to me, it always sounds like not that really interesting. Honestly, like, it's always the thing, when you look back, you see a straight line. But during that whole process, I actually never was sure where this might lead. Because for one thing, a lot of things just came by accident, to be honest. Like the whole strength training thing. A lot of my friends started going to the gym when we were around 17, 18 years old. And I was not having the money to sign up for the gym. So I took my father's old, like, plastic dumbbells filled with sand, like 3 kilos each, and started training with them for exercises that were too easy with just one of them. I just took both in one hand and tried it that way. And I liked it. I'm not sure what kept me going, because in the beginning I was like, yeah, let's see, I'll probably do that for a few weeks or months at best, and then it will be something that will stay in my past. But for whatever reason, I kept going for, I think, almost 4 years before I got introduced to kettlebells, also again by accident. A friend of mine took me with him to a training he was doing with somebody who would become actually my best friend. And he just came back from the States, got exposed to kettlebells there. He has a pretty extensive martial arts background. He is a full instructor under Guru Dan Inosanto, who was Bruce Lee's best friend and student, and who also got training sessions with Pavel. And he saw the kettlebells there, got interested, got a kettlebell here in Germany, started training with them. I got involved into his little group, saw a kettlebell the first time, I think in October of 2010, and then got my first pair of kettlebells in March of 2011. Enter the kettlebell.
Can I just ask, Sven, when you were young, were you, because I'll post that little picture up in a minute that we took with you doing the double biceps. Were you, when you were young, you know, when you were 15, 16, 17, 18, when you first got introduced to the gym and things, what was your kind of physique or build like? Were you a skinny teenager? Were you quite a thick set and strong teenager? What was your natural kind of body size, body type, you know?
More on the thick or stout, or however you want to call it. So I was never skinny or lean in any way. But I was not like super huge either. So somewhere on the normal side of things, leaning more towards thick. But if you would see my father, you know exactly where I got that from. So he was working his whole life physically, and I think I got that along with some other, let's say, character traits from him as well. So that is, my natural tendency, let's say.
Yeah. Okay. So did you find that when you did your 4 years of conventional kind of strength training, I suppose, starting with these light dumbbells and obviously progressing from there, but before you started with kettlebells, did you kind of, did you respond well to the training? Did you find that you were kind of strong and you got strong quite quickly and you developed quite quickly over those first 4 years?
I mean, I saw that I was responding very well in a like aesthetics wise, like losing body fat, building muscle. I did not have a real strength focus at that time because it was like it was exercises I saw in Men's Health, and then doing my own little program with that. Basically just adding exercises whenever I liked one. So I think over the course of a few months, my training sessions took like 2 hours because I just added exercises. I didn't cut them, trained 3 times a week, and that felt pretty good. And then I got a book, which was called Training for Warriors by Martin Rooney. So his first MMA-based strength training book at that time. And that was my first insight into what strength training actually could be. So that you're not just training for the look, for the physique, but there's also like a performance enhancing activity to that. And that together with the kettlebell got me started down the road that I'm currently on. So Pavel's enter the kettlebell, then Starting Strength by Mark Rifkin.
Ripto, is it?
Ripto, not Ripto.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think I started training at around 2007, I think, but not before 2011 that there was any like structure or progression behind my training at all. I just did it because I liked it. I felt good. But like the goal of getting stronger or actually training for a certain goal, that took me way, way longer.
It's funny that because we were talking about this with Keith last week, and just in general with like lots of people when you're starting out, you don't need to specify in anything. You can just dabble and so you said like for the first 4 years you were just, I mean, and you were young as well, so you've got all the time ahead of you to do whatever you like, so you can just mess around and see how it goes. As long as you're not doing anything ridiculously stupid, you're going to be good, aren't you? And then you can start, like obviously you can start to say, right, I want to concentrate on endurance or strength or whatever it is. So that's brilliant. I think it's a good example.
I mean, looking back, I would have loved to get some more structure a little bit earlier in my training, but then again, like being able just to see what actually works for you, what you like to do, what you're gravitating to naturally, is also, I think, a valuable experience for anybody to do, because like we are interested in strength training and getting stronger, but you can have so much different like a different focus of your training. You don't have to be a strength athlete to benefit from strength training.
So when you first got introduced to, I suppose, like you said, Pavel, enter the kettlebell, your friend who went away and learned about kettlebells maybe in America and came back. What was when did you get involved in Strongfirst, or was it even Strongfirst then? Was this when there was RKC and that kind of back in the day? Yeah.
That was still before Strongfirst. So like I think it was 2011 when I got my first kettlebells, and then I was looking at the back of the book where they advertised the RKC certification at that time. I read about the snatch test and it was like, yeah, well, no way that I'm ever going to be able to do that. Like the thoughts everybody has when they see something like that, when you're just starting out training with kettlebells, it seems like a task nobody will ever be able to do. But you don't know what training will actually do for you and where you can get with just a little structure and time actually on your side.
I think that's really good that for people to hear you, especially maybe people who are involved with Strongfirst now and kettlebells and kind of maybe have even met you or seen you or follow you online, and to see the kind of things that you do now, and the kind of weights that you lift and how much and how developed you are, that there was a time when you looked at the 24 kilo snatch test and thought it was impossible for you to do, or saw no way that you could possibly do it. So I think that's actually a really encouraging thing, because most people, we spoke, I'm either listening to a podcast or we spoke recently about it, where you tend to look at people who are at a certain level now and assume, I think maybe we did talk to Keith about it, I'm not sure, where you look at people at a certain level now and you think, well, they've always been not at that level, but you know, they're different to me, you know, they're somehow born with this or naturally do it, or so I think that's really encouraging and really important for people to understand, you know.
There was a podcast Jocko did, I think last year, if I remember correctly, with Jordan Peterson. And there was just one sentence he said, and he was like, you know, it's not that I'm stronger. I just did this for longer than you probably. So if I'm lifting more weight right now than somebody else, then very likely I did that for longer than they did. And all they have to put in is a little more time. As long as you are on a, let's say, upward trajectory, and we all know that it's never going to be a straight line and there will be ups and downs, but let's say the long-term trend is good, then all you have to do is to be patient. Just
I've got two questions for you now out of that. So, because same with like kind of what James has just said, I've after I've met you once in person, and you're a big lad, right? I mean, you're quite tall and and beefy, shall we say? No, so people might look at you and go, well, yeah, like James has just kind of said, yeah, it's easy for you because look at you, you know. However, you said doing a snatch test with a 24 would be, you know, beyond what you were capable of at the time. So the first thing is, what's the heaviest bell you've done the snatch test with? Because I'm assuming you've done it with way heavier than that. Since
32.
32, right? And that
32.
question was for me. That's not for anyone else. I was just interested to know as soon as you said that. And I've forgotten what the second question was. But anyway, there you go.
So I did my level 1 in 2016. Weighing a little over 100 kilo at that time. And there was not what then would be over 100 kilo category in the snatch test for men, right? So my first snatch test was with the 24. Then 2 years later at the SFG2, after they announced the new weight category, I had to do it with the 28. And I was going into that like, okay, yeah, you practice snatching with the 32 and even a few reps with the 36. So you're able to handle that, right? And I was completely smoked afterwards. Like that was actually quite crushing. I had to do it 1 year later when I did my elite research, and it was way easier at that time.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. My training basically didn't look a lot different at that time. It was just the additional time I put in.
Yeah. It's funny because that's the opposite of me, because I weighed 60. I did mine November 2014, and you had to do everything with double L's. And the weight categories were different then. I weighed 63 kilos, so I had to do everything with double 24s. Now I think it's 68 kilos is the cutoff. So I had to do the snatch test with a 24 weighing 63 kilos. So now, actually, everything's single bell and I weigh more, so it's easier for me. You've gone the other way. I know I've just remembered what my second question is, and this is quite fitting because you're in Italy. And I know when Fabio last missed a training session, it was like August 1994 or something like that. He knows the exact date. When did you last miss a training session?
Oh, actually, just last week.
You're not committed. Why? Well, no, the reason why I'm asking is
because, why?
Like,
why was that?
Because my son decided to get up earlier than he used to.
Okay.
So I was just finishing my warm up, and he came around the corner, and it was like, okay, I guess that's it for today.
No, the reason why I asked that is because, like you said, the Jocko thing, I've just done it for longer than you, and obviously you're committed. And we spoke about this before we started to record, didn't we? Because you're on holiday, and you've got your bells with you because you've got a goal that has just appeared out of nowhere. Yeah. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because you said, like, you know, you're in a. I mean, we were saying, like, me and James are going away. He's going down to Devon or Cornwall or whatever. And I'm off up to the lakes, but we're driving, so I'm going to take my bells with me. James might not.
Yeah, it's funny, I've just packed the truck up and I've got a 20, a 24, a 30, and then I've got the 2 kilo magnet one, you know, as well. and I'm taking a mace, so I can take all that in the truck with me. So
Well, we've only got a mini, so I'm taking a 28, a 36, and two mag plates. But
yeah.
But like we'll be taking the stuff away. But that's like we're driving there. You're going. You're in a foreign country. So how did you get your bells there? And why did you take them more specifically? Because that brings us into what you're going to do next, right?
So my girlfriend, our son, and me, we were flying by plane here. But my girlfriend's parents actually came by car. And I convinced her father to take a few kettlebells with him. Just because I wanted to keep a little bit of more structured training during those 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks now. Because I applied for another attempt to lift the Dinnie Stones in October 1st, and every spot was taken until 2 weeks ago when I was contacted by Stevie Shanks, and he was like, you know what? There was somebody just dropping off. We have one spot. Do you want to take it? And for me, it was basically a no-brainer. And I said, yes. And afterwards, I looked at my schedule and it was like, okay, 2.5 weeks of vacation. I should be training in that time. So the decision was fairly easy for me to take the belts with me, especially now the luxury that, like I said, my girlfriend's father was driving by car, and so it was a little easier for me. Originally, I planned just to do some bodyweight training here, like practice more on that end of things, because I just haven't done it for a while. But now with that new goal on the horizon, I had to change plans a little bit. And it was interesting when I first trained to lift the Dinnie Stones, how much I actually could train with bells and develop strength through that. Only having a little exposure to a barbell here and now, because I, at that point, started physiotherapy school, quit working at the gym, didn't have access to a barbell. And most of my training was actually done with kettlebells, doing only a few heavy lifts here once or twice a week. And that will be my plan coming back from vacation. Like, I think I have 6 weeks or something like that. And I haven't pulled heavy since lifting the Dinnie Stone. So that will be interesting. It's been 2 years.
That's interesting though, because like you said, you were planning on just doing bodyweight training while you're away, which is great. But then it's one of those things, because people say, oh yeah, you can do bodyweight training and get as strong as hell. And it's like, you can. However, it won't necessarily translate over to lifting 300 odd kilos off the ground with uneven weight, having to do it Jefferson style or whatever. So that's my next question. Well, 2 questions. How easy or hard did you find it the first time? 3 questions. Why do you want to do it again? And how are you going to do it? Because Andy Russell was saying there's several, you can lift them and walk, you can lift them and hold, you can lift them side by side, or you can do it straddled or whatever. So what's your plan?
So why I'm doing it again, I cannot really tell you. It's like, why did I start strength training? Why did the kettlebell speak to me? Those are questions I don't have an answer to you. It's just like that feeling inside you. Like, this is where you
I know
belong.
exactly what you mean, because I'm going to get another tattoo and it hurts. So why? But why? I'm going to do it. Right. I'm going to do it anyway.
Why do you do the things that hurt you?
Exactly.
They give you more than you can express in words. Like, I mean, just I think on Saturday, I watched Stoneland for the 12th, 13th time. I'm not sure. And I'm still getting goosebumps just watching the intro. It's something, I'm not sure. Like, those stones, there's a great saying in there. They're rocks to anybody walking past. But if you know the story, if you know the history, that's what makes it awesome. And I think it's the same with the kettlebell. Like, it's a cannonball with a handle. But if you go back in history and see what people did, how they trained with kettlebells, the amazing feats they did, it's just amazing. And
just for the listeners, Sven, just for the listeners, before we move past it, you mentioned the documentary Stoneland.
Yeah.
So I think that you can find that just on YouTube, can't you? And,
yes,
and
type
in. So just quickly, if you don't mind, just a quick 20 seconds, what it is, what it's about, just so people
no spoilers.
No, yeah.
No,
But
Do
just
they
so
lift it?
people
Do they
know,
not?
because I want people who are kind of interested in this kind of thing to maybe go and search it, find it and watch it. But yeah, can you just give us a quick little synopsis, or if you like,
So the late Terry Todd, University of Austin, I think. He and his wife, together with Rogue, the company from the States, started doing some documentaries first on the old-time strongmen and then also on stone lifting in different countries. And I think the first one was actually Levantadores in the Basque country, where they have a pretty extensive history and culture around like not just stone lifting, but similar to the timber sports, like different events imitating the manual labor the people in those areas would have to do on a farm, for example, and they turned it into a competition over time. They have different stones, they lift in different manners, and it's just amazing to see not just how they lift them, but the amount they lift. Like, I think the record with one stone is over 300 kilograms, and it's just like, you cannot get that into your head. It's just crazy. And the second one they did was Stoneland, which took place in Scotland, where they highlighted the whole like myth around Donald Dinnie, the manhood stones that were used in the clans for testing, like who would become a warrior, who would become actually the chief, because in a lot of clans in Scotland, the position was not claimed by birthright, but by ability. So you had to prove your worth to the clan in order to become the chieftain and lead them. And part of that was I mean, the biggest part on in Stoneland is on the Dinnie Stones, actually. And what Donald Dinnie accomplished, like carrying them across a bridge, basically. So it's super interesting if you want to dive deeper into that. Have a look at the documentary. There's also a great book called Stone Lifting, written by Martin Jancis and Dr. Bill Crawford, who are both in the documentary. And then if you really want to dive deep into the whole stone lifting thing, there's one last documentary they did in Iceland, which is called Full Styrkur. And that's 1 hour and 30 minutes, I think. So
yeah, I watched the Iceland one, because full Styrkur, I think it means fully strong or full strength or something. And then
yeah, exactly.
there's the half, because I'm gonna go over to Iceland in November, actually. So
You will.
yeah, so I'm gonna go and see some stuff over there. So that'll be great. But no, thank you. And I mean, like we've had obviously Indiana Stones, we've had David Keown on the podcast as well. So
I was going to say, if we're talking about books and documentaries, just he'll have a few of those out too.
Yeah. So no, it's fascinating. So what was the experience? Like you said, you're going back to do it again. So what was the experience the first time when you went there? I've seen you, obviously. I've seen your lift. Your photo of you with them, with the wind under the Dinnie Stones. Yeah, what was that experience like? It must have been good, because you're doing it again.
Oh, it's still hard to believe that I actually was there and did it, to be honest. Like the picture is on the wall right in front of my desk, and every time I look at it, I'm like, did I really do that? I just it's still hard to grasp, actually. It was an amazing experience. Just, how would you say, bringing that whole process to a conclusion, like from my decision to, yes, I'm actually going to start training for that, to the point where I went to Scotland and then also did that. Like, wrapping my head around that is still something that's hard to do. And part of the reason I wanted to do it again is because I was just not happy with my lift, to be honest. So, like I said, I had to switch plans in my training, and that goes back to your question, Peter. Because I had to restructure my whole training approach, basing it mainly on kettlebells. I mean, there's a great article by Pavel. It's like, I think it's called Minimalist Deadlift Protocol for Quick and the Dead, something like that. You should find it on the Strongfirst blog, where he talks about like the carryover from kettlebell ballistics, especially if you train them like, let's say, the strong endurance or ANA way, or what's now become kettlebell X, like heavier weights for lower reps, but with a main focus on power and explosiveness. And he makes the point there that to get the full carryover, like the adaptations also of the sinews, of the ligaments, the tendons, you need some heavy strength training. And the protocol he presents there is like 3 to 5 deadlift singles, fairly heavy on low volume days, which usually is like once every 7 to 10 days. And that worked just fantastically for me. And this is the approach I will take this time as well. I don't have access to a barbell. I have my kettlebells at home, and I do have the pins, which a friend of mine did for me. I got imitation rings. I have plates. So I will probably go about it the same way as before, like doing mostly not high rep, but higher volume kettlebell swings, heavy swings, one arm swings, snatches, and then supplementing that with the heavy pulls. And yeah, that should do the trick again, I hope.
I love that
this
because
time I know what I'm going to face. This is my big advantage, because what threw me off, and which is why I was not happy with my lift, was that they have you lift these stones on fairly unstable mats. Because in my training I think I lifted like almost 30 kilos more than the stones weigh. So I was super confident that I would be making a successful attempt. And when I arrived there, I was the last of 6 guys. We took turns, so everybody went, and they one by one they failed with the first attempt. And I was like going like, okay, looks like I'm going to be the first one lifting them today. And of course I didn't make it, because I mean, as I started pushing into the floor, I just sank deeper. And that was a feeling that just threw me off. And now, knowing what I will have to do, I think that should be like one less hurdle, let's say.
So did everyone, you had the 6 of you there, did you all had like an attempt, if you like, but and then did everyone go the sort of same order again? I mean, did anyone out of the 6 lift it on the first attempt?
Nobody.
No. Wow. Okay.
No. We had like nobody on their first attempt. A guy from the States and me on the second attempt, and then one more guy, I think, from England on the third attempt.
Wow. So so is that what? So 3 of you out of the 6? Is that right? Actually, you completed the lift. Wow. God,
That's
and
amazing.
you've got to have some commitment if you've flown over from the US as well to do it.
Yes, right.
This is what I was going to talk about. Number one, you said about without trying to get political, because it's not a political show, but like basically whoever could lift the stone and prove their worth, they could lead. It's like, we should probably go back to that, but anyway, whoever can prove their worth can lead, because it doesn't necessarily go like that. But anyway, yeah, what I love about this is the specifics, like you say. So you even got a friend, because you said Andy talked about this, and obviously you coached him, so he probably got it from you. But you were like, because he said one ring's like kind of round, the other one's like an oval shape, and they're thinner than your usual barbell or anything like that. So they dig into your hands more and all of that. So you've actually gone and had some replicas. And this is what I love about the things like the Dinnie Stones, is people are like James said, it's a big commitment. You fly over there, you've got to get it done. It's a big expense. It's lots of training. So it's like you do everything you can to make sure that attempt is going to happen. And I think that's brilliant, because it's like, that's like the commitment is there, isn't it? And we've had I think you're the 3rd person we've had on who's lifted them, because we had Tom, I've forgotten his name. I mentioned him the other week as well.
Tom Barber,
that's him. Yeah. He's lifted them, I think. And he lifted them after he was on the show, I think. And then Andy's done it, and you've done it as well. So, and how many people have done it? 200
So I was number 204, but by now I think we are at 200 and over 260, I think.
Yeah,
All
because I
right,
think
well-
Andrew Russell, I think, was about 274.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
you're kind of, it's probably up in the high 200s. Yeah.
Yeah. They
What we could
released an
do is a
interesting
spin-off.
statistic.
We could do a spin-off show and do 200 and odd episodes of just interviewing people who lifted the Dinnie Stones.
Oh man, that would be cool.
It would be amazing.
So Sven,
I mean-
sorry, you were just going to say there's an interesting statistic.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
So there's a site called liftingstones.org, and they do a newsletter. And I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, they released a statistic of number of Dinnie Stone lifts per year. So not attempts, but successful lifts. And before 2016, it was, I think, 3 to 5 people at most. And then in 2016, Stoneland was released. And all of a sudden you had 30, 40. And I think 2022 was the year with the most successful lift, like over 50 lifts. So that documentary put a spike in there. And that's cool to see, because if you watch a documentary, spoiler, the stone lifting culture was actually something that started to disappear in Scotland, even in the time of Donald Dinnie. And he was one to really fighting for getting that back and revivified that. And now, like 200 years later, you have the same thing happening again. So there's a steady increase happening. And I think that's so wonderful, because those traditions, those things are something that should not be forgotten. Because for one, it's what makes the culture what it actually is. Like this gives the whole character to, I think, the different cultures around the world. But then also this is something you see as a commonality throughout the world, actually. Like there's a guy called Sean Urquhart. I'm not sure if you know him. He does a great thing on Instagram, which is called We Search Wednesday, where not every Wednesday, but pretty much once a month, he puts out some information on stone lifting from different countries around the world. And it's so interesting to see. Like I said, my best friend, pretty extensive background in martial arts. He told me the same thing, and he got me books on that, like where you say, like different countries, everywhere there's a martial arts evolving over the time. Although the systems look different from the outside, they're pretty much similar on the inside on what you actually do. So it's like something like some kind of striking, some kind of grappling or ground-based fighting, and then you have a weapons-based system. And it's similar with the stone lifting, with the strength training. Like look back to ancient Greece, and you find those huge stones with scriptures on them, like who lifted them, and it's just fascinating to see how we as a species, let's say, gravitate towards those things. And it's something that makes us human, I think. Like those urge to strive to get stronger, to get better, let's say. And it's just an expression of that, I think, to me.
I think it's funny because you just said about being human. And for me, being like that's more of the animal side at lifting it in my head, and the being human thing is trying to understand why, when it doesn't matter. You just go and do it, and it makes you feel good. It's like it doesn't matter why. You just carry on doing it, you know. I was going to ask, you've probably answered this already, but I was going to, because David has obviously gone around Ireland uncovering all these stones. So you were saying since Stoneland, because he said he watched Stoneland over lockdown, didn't he? And then he got into stone lifting garden because the gym was shut. So obviously the popularity of it has gone up, and then he's gone around Ireland and found all these stones because he was like, well, there aren't any on the map. I think it's on that site that you mentioned. They've got a map of the stones of the world, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's just been adding to Ireland like all over the place. So what would the equivalent be in Germany? Was there a stone lifting culture, or is there an equivalent kind of thing?
So there is no real history on that, to be honest. I was talking with Sean about that. There is one story of a duke, actually from the state where I'm from, who supposedly lifted a big black stone of, I think, 182 kilograms. And you can find it in Munich. It still lies there in the old castle. It's not liftable. It's chained, actually. And I think nobody would be able to lift it. But besides that, you don't really find stories on that. So he had a trace going back to the farmers. But I couldn't find anything on that specifically. Like, I was actually going around talking to farmers in our area, and they would not know about those stones. It was something like basically a stone that would mark a place where they would hold court or something like that. So the Vikings did something similar. They had their meetings at a certain place where matters were talked over that would like be important for the whole clan. Decisions would be made on how to go about certain boundaries, let's say with your neighbors, things like that. And apparently there was something similar in Germany concerning the farmers, but you cannot find any like written documents on that those stones would actually be lifted. If you look like at countries around Germany, you find those similar traditions though, like testing stones to to get a job on a farm. You have like throwing contests in Switzerland, for example. So I guess there was something like that at one point. It probably got forgotten over time. So that is my guess at the moment.
I'm going to put this out there, and I apologize to you, Sven, if this ruins your life in the future because you get too busy. But David said the same in Ireland, and then he just started to pull at the thread, and then people started getting in touch with him. And then all of a sudden he was meeting 90-year-old guys in a village somewhere who were like, oh yeah, my grandfather lifted that stone back in the day. So it was still only just within living memory. So I'm just putting that out there. So if there's any listeners,
it would be wonderful.
Want to send Sven any messages about lifting stones in Germany, get involved.
I mean, earlier this year, we went on a little vacation with our son to Bavaria, to an old farm. They reconstructed and turned into like a family vacation location. And driving there, we came by so many farms, and I was scouting like, okay, this could be a stone to lift, like using the description David actually used. Like, you find those stones, let's say, in the center of a village, sometimes under a big tree. And I was really scouting the area for that, but I did not have the time to go to those places and actually ask the people. That would have been cool.
Did you say this was on a vacation earlier this year?
Yeah.
So this is you're going all these vacations. You've got time.
You see, since officially I'm at school and I have school holiday.
That's all the time you need then. Excellent.
Exactly.
So like, Sven, can I ask you, Sven, just as to kind of, kind of make this applicable for you and for others as well. You've mentioned a couple of times now, you've got a son. And how old is your son? He's very little at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, 1.5 years.
1.5 years, okay. So what I was going to ask was how has that kind of changed your life and your time for training, or because you already mentioned you missed the training session last week because your son woke up and then it's time to spend time with him and things. So has it been a challenge to keep training, or have you changed your training, or have you restructured it, or have you had to kind of change the way you view training and the way you fit it in? I mean, because this is obviously something that most people at some stage will go through, either through, having children or maybe a change in commitments with work and that kind of thing. So how has that kind of impacted you?
Oh, in all the ways you just mentioned.
Okay.
So, he's also an early riser. Yeah, I think he got that from me.
Okay.
So I always trained in the morning before leaving for school or leaving for work. But so one thing was I had to move my training even earlier in the day So not during the next 2 weeks. On every other day during the week, I get up at 3 in the morning.
Wow.
Take a
Okay.
shower, get some coffee, read a little bit, do a little work, and then I train for up to an hour. Let's put it that way. So starting at 5, 5:15, something like that. And then it could happen that he decides to get up at 5:30. And then that was my training for the day, basically. So what I realized at one point was, right now is not the time to follow any like set in stone structured program with any linear progression or anything like that. I'm not going 100% intuitively as well. So for me, what works best at the moment is having some guidelines, a framework within which I'm able to move fairly freely, let's say. So things like easy strength, or what turned into Pavel New's book, Kettlebell X, like the anti-glycolytic training. Those things work very well at the moment for me. The thing I realized as well was like, it came as a surprise to me, although it's pretty obvious. Brett Jones likes to talk about that. You have to keep an eye on your recovery. And if your life stress increases over time, your training stress, let's say, cannot increase at the same time. So I realized at one point that I need to cut back on training a little more than I would like to make it nevertheless effective and giving me the results I want to do. Like it's one of these situations where doing less will actually give you more, because you would not be able to recover from more.
This is really interesting, because I know that when we spoke to Andrew, it's a slightly different, because he does like shift work, and he was talking about programming his training, but that's not kind of like a surprise as such. He'll know, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in advance what his shifts are, and then he can program it. Whereas with a child, it's a lot more ad hoc, and things can change, day to day, or, like you say, one day they might just wake up early, and then your training has to change. And then the other person we spoke to recently was Lucy Underdown, who we mentioned, is one of the strongest, is the strongest female deadlifter in the world. And she's a full-time police officer. And she was talking as well about having to change her training and actually reduce the number of sessions per week. I think originally from 5 down to 3, because that was causing stress with a stressful job and not sleeping properly, and then trying to do 5 heavy sessions. So no, it's really interesting that over the last probably month, where there's been 3 of you who've kind of said similar things, albeit slightly differently in slightly different circumstances. But because I see people at my gym, and I'm sure you see people, and Pete sees people who, they might be going through very, very stressful times, but they're trying to hammer themselves, or they're trying to, they're going for a stressful time in life, but then they want to lump on more stress with training, or have some massive physical goal. And I think when you're training for a lifelong pursuit, like all 3 of us are, you can accept that, okay, well, maybe the next 6 months to 12 months is a time to more tick over and just be a bit more fluid with training, and not jump into something massive like 18-month-old child and that sort of thing. So no, it's really important for people to understand that, I think.
Help me out, because I've just
interesting.
Sorry, carry on, Sven.
Just a quick thought, because it was interesting what you mentioned that Lucy did. So she cut back from 5 to 3 training sessions, but kept them fairly heavy, right? So I stayed with my 5 sessions from Monday through Friday, but I cut down on the length of the session. Because I felt with getting up that early, I actually needed that little push in the morning to keep me going. It's something Jeff Newport talked a few years ago, like the training should actually provide you the energy to keep going. And at first I was like, well, usually I feel a little bit more tired after training than before. But that really made me understand what he was trying to get at, because like it's the saying, I'm not sure where it came from. I'm not sure if it originated with Pavel, but like feeling better after the training session than before. That made me understand that. So now I actually look forward to my training every morning, because I know with the training done, I will have an easier time, let's say, being energized throughout my day, not having that sluggish phases throughout the afternoon. Yes, I will go to bed fairly early because I have to rise in the morning fairly early as well.
I was going to ask, actually, if you're waking up at 3 a.m., what time do you tend to be in bed?
By 9 p.m. in the evening. Yeah. Sometimes it works better, sometimes not so much, but usually around that time.
Yeah, excellent. Because I've been listening to a thing with Robin Sharma recently, who wrote a book years ago. I read it, called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. He's kind of like a self-help kind of guy, but then he wrote the 5 a.m. Club, and he was just talking about, he wakes up at 4 and, like you said, does some reading, gets some coffee, and then does some exercise. And but he goes to bed early, but he sort of said that, and it is true, at that time of the morning when you're up early, the world is a very peaceful place, isn't it? It's a different kind of place, and you can do what you want to do without distraction, and without lots of people calling upon you, because most other people are in bed. so it's interesting. Yeah, what are you gonna say, Pete?
I've just thought of Dan John there. It's like, you're gonna get up at 5, right? I'm gonna be better than you. I'm gonna get up at 4:30. Well, I'm gonna be better than you. I'm gonna get up at 4. Right? Well, I'm gonna get up at like the 4 Yorkshiremen. Like, I got up before I went to bed because I'm better than you.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, there's probably a name for it, but what you've just described is kind of semi-intuitive training. So you said you're not going fully intuitive training, whatever that means, but you're also not fully structured as well. You've got wiggle room in your training somewhere in the middle, which is what most people will need. Because I mean, for me, I've got a spaniel and it's 30 degrees over here. So we have to go out for a walk in the morning, where usually I take him out in the afternoon for 3 hours, and he gets plenty of time then, but I'll train in the morning. But if I don't train in the morning and then it's 30 degrees in the afternoon, I hate it. And I end up doing like 50% of my program. But doing 100% of my program is going to take away from my life. Doing 50% of it isn't going to like stall the progress, basically, because it's just because I'm too hot, because I'm rubbish with the heat. So yeah, that's how I look at it, is semi-intuitive. Like, I'm not just going to go with what I'm going to stick to the program, but I'm just going to take it back a little bit because I don't want to hurt myself, basically. So I want to enjoy it. So yeah,
and it should, like you say, it shouldn't take away from the rest of your life.
Yeah,
like, there are other responsibilities you have.
Well, I don't, but
I'll tell you what, Sven, this has been amazing, and we haven't even really touched on lots of stuff. So I think what we'll have to say is we will have you back on again in the near future, if that's okay.
It would be a pleasure.
Next time he's on holiday, which will be in about 3 weeks.
Maybe you can, we could do a live one from, we'll do a live one from Scotland. In the Dinnies in October. Yeah.
What do you think about that? We could do that.
Yeah.
Because there's just one other cool thing that's going to happen, which I didn't tell you now. But Martin Jancis, the Stone Man.
Yeah.
Right. I contacted him again, and he will actually meet me 2 days before my attempt at the Dinnie Stones to help me with my attempt to lift the Inverstone as well.
The Inverstone. Okay, so can you explain to us and our listeners what that is, please?
So that is basically, I think, the second most famous stone in Scotland, and I would say worldwide. Like in Scotland, the Dinnie Stones, the Inverstone, and then we mentioned Iceland, there's the Husafell Stone. So those three usually are the top three most people know about in let's say the world of strength training. The Inverstone is basically like almost a sphere, a little more on the oval side of things, I think. It's the origin, let's say, of the Atlas stone. So it was Inver stone, then those McLashan stones, and then the Atlas stones. Like in the book Stone Lifting, there's a great article by David Webster who talks about the origin of the Inver stone. Actually, Donald Dinnie is involved in that as well. Like Donald Dinnie's first name became Donald because a guy named Donald lifted the Inver stone with such an ease that his father was so impressed, because Donald's father was the only one who could do that at this time, that he named his son after that guy. So it's a cool story. And it weighs 120 kilos, I think. It's 265 pounds. And so either you lift it on a plinth, or what I would like to do is getting it on my shoulder. And I tried that 2 years ago as well. Did not really prepare for that. Just gave it a try. And it was way harder than expected. So I got it on my lap, but I couldn't stand up with it, sadly. So this time I hope I'm a little better prepared for that. And it's also a cool chance to meet Martin. He's an amazing guy. He when I asked him if he would have time to meet up, he was like, yeah, sure, let me know which day and time would work for you and I'll make it happen. So it's that community thing again. And also he is, like I said, one of the guys who's responsible for the growing popularity of stone lifting in Scotland. He's one of the main figures in the Stoneland documentary, so it would be wonderful to meet him.
I'm definitely going to be watching the Stoneland documentary again. I watched it quite a long time ago, but now that I'm going to be on holiday for 2 weeks.
Oh, you have to.
I'll definitely watch that. That's brilliant. No, well, that sounds like a plan then. If we catch up with you again, maybe kind of October time, we'll stay in touch, obviously. But it'd be great to talk to you after the next one and hear how you do with the Inverstone. That's going to be incredible. Oh, that's a great conversation, Pete, isn't it? I could tell Pete's smiling. He loves it.
Love the stories. I didn't know Donald Dinnie was called Donald because of this guy who lifted I love that.
Yeah.
That is amazing. It's brilliant.
That's the thing. If you start to dive into the story behind those things, it's just so amazing how rich it actually is.
Yeah, it's embedded, isn't it? It's woven into the culture. It's amazing. I love it.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you mentioned it, but I will be in November. I'll go to Husafell and see that's one of the events they'll be doing there, the Husafell stones. So that's about
I will keep a close eye on your profile. So that will be because, and I did not tell anybody about this until now, but Rogue sells the full Sturker t-shirt, right? Just a black t-shirt with full Sturker on it.
Okay.
And I got that. And it's on the wall in front of me.
Yeah.
Because this is my big goal. So lifting the Husafell stone in Iceland, walking the full round around the sheep pen. And I'm not going to wear that t-shirt until I did that.
Oh,
so this is the big long-term goal for me at the moment.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Oh, Sven, it's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. And like I say, you sat there in gorgeous Tuscan countryside. Oh, God, look at that.
Listen to that.
I'm quite lucky.
You are very, that is amazing. Yeah.
There's a tree over there.
Yeah.
2 days ago, I took a walk with Liam.
Yeah.
Because he was just too tired. And he fell asleep. And it was like, you know what? That's the perfect place for a nap. So I just lay down, leaning against the tree, and we took a nap of an hour, I think. So
that was just pulled down.
I hope you're enjoying some nice wine and things over there as well.
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Like the meat here, the prices, it's so cheap compared to Germany, you would not believe.
Wow. And you were there for 2.5 weeks, yeah?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's my last big school vacation, so I have to take opportunity of that.
Yeah.
So when I come home, it will be time to start preparing for the final exams, which will be in March next year.
Okay.
So that will be an interesting time getting all those things, let's say, arranged in my day.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, if people, I mentioned the videos of you training out there. If people want to follow you, because obviously I'm sure they will now. You're talking about all the things you've got coming up and your training and things. What platform are you most active on? Is it Instagram? Is that a good place
Yeah,
for people to go? Yeah.
yeah. There's the auto share function on Facebook, so you can still find most of the things there as well.
Yeah.
But the way it just developed over the last 2 years, Instagram became the main platform for me.
Excellent. So that's Sven, SVEN _ Rieger, RIEGER on Instagram. And like I say, he's got a great Instagram feed, and you can see loads of good training and photos and things on there, which are really inspiring. And especially, I'm sure we'll see, we'll talk again, obviously, like I say, later this year with you. But if people want to go, and highly recommend them give you a follow on there. And we haven't touched really upon, the Strongfirst Elite, the Sinister, the team leader stuff you're doing, but it's been great what we have talked about, and I'm sure, like I say, we'll get you on again later in the year and have another really good conversation. But thank you so much, Sven.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me
Cool.
on. Hard to believe that this is already an hour passing by. So
I know, it's been great. And I tell you what, I will actually, Pete, I'm gonna read that review that I needed to read. Yeah, because I'm going to pass on to another. Let me just, right, this is on the fly here. Health Oddity. Let me just find it here. We have had a few new reviews come in, but the one that I'm going to read quickly now, it's written about episode 201, which is what's changed in the last 25 years. And this is from Ryan Jones, and he said, found this podcast really interesting and puts a lot of how everyday habits have in general changed over the last 25 years into perspective, especially how junk food, targeted marketing and technology has enabled a more obese and lazy culture. So that was specifically around one podcast. That's Ryan Jones, Ryan J80. So Ryan, if you want to message me and let us know which t-shirt size and color you would like, and then we'll get that for you ASAP. Okay, so like we said, we are trying to get reviews on Apple Podcasts. We are getting more and more reviews on there, which is great. And if you write a review, we will read the review out, and then we will send you out some Health Oddity merchandise. So yeah, thank you so much, Pete, for today.
That's perfectly all right. I was going to be here anyway. But thank you to Sven.
Thank you for
my pleasure,
Sven
guys.
for joining us
very
from
much.
Tuscany. Absolutely brilliant. And thank you to all of you for listening. We will be back next week with episode 209. That will be post-holiday for Pete and myself. So we'll have plenty to talk about as well.
That'll be even more pronounced.
Pete will have his
It's hard to
t-shirt
get rid of that.
You don't. You don't.
It's impossible.
It's with me forever.
Oh, dear. So we'll be back next week. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. We're not sure. We have got guests lined up. I'm not sure who the guest at 209 will be, or if it might just be me and Pete. But yeah, thank you. Sven will be back with us later in the year, which we're looking forward to. Thank you all for listening. And like I say, Health Oddity on Apple Podcasts, if you can do reviews for us on there. And also a shout out again to give us a subscribe on YouTube if you don't already, because we're getting quite a bit of traction on there as well, which is great. So until next time, bye-bye.